Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of Principles of Management, Module 6 for 5th semester BTech students. I am Saritha V, Assistant Professor, Department of Basic Sciences and Humanities, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. In this session, we are going to discuss about organizational control and techniques associated with controlling function. The contents of the discussion are as follows: organizational control, control techniques, budgetary control, non-budgetary control, and modern control techniques. There are different types of control techniques. Commonly, it is divided into budgetary and non-budgetary control techniques. We will also discuss some of the modern controlling techniques too. Organizational control refers to the systematic process of regulating organizational activities to make them consistent with the expectations established in plans, targets, and standards of performance. Let us first try to understand budgetary control techniques. Organizations prepare a budget in order to get an idea about the expense and revenue of any project, program, or venture that they are about to undertake. This is to make it cost effective with the constraints. Budgetary control techniques plays a similar and important role in every organization. Budgetary control is the process of setting targets for an organization's expenditure, monitoring results, and comparing them to the budget and making changes as needed. Now, let us see what are the different types of budgetary control techniques. These are a few important budgetary control techniques that we need to understand. The first one that we will be discussing is about Planning Program Budgetary System, or Ppbs. Second, we will be discussing about zero-based budgeting. Third, about variance analysis. Fourth, about adjustment of funds. And final, about human resource accounting. Planning Program Budgetary System, or Ppbs. Planning Program Budgetary System was first introduced in the Defense Department in the USA in 1961 by Robert McNamara and in all departments in 1965 until 1975. McNamara directed Hitch to analyze defense requirements systematically and produce a long-term program-oriented defense budget. Ppbs was used as a systematic calendar date-driven process for identifying and funding defense and security-related needs and assessing results achieved against established programmatic and financial management objectives. When it comes to organizational control, Ppbs is an integrated management system that places emphasis on the use of analysis of program decision making. The purpose of Ppbs is to provide management with a better analytical basis for making program decisions and for putting such decision into operation through an integration of the planning, programming, and budget functions. Program decision making is a fundamental function of management. It involves making basic choices as to the direction of an organization's effort and allocating resources accordingly. This function consists of first of identifying the objectives of the organization, then deciding on the measures that will be taken in pursuit of those goals, and finally putting the selected course of action into effect. An organization can be viewed in a simplified way as carrying out its functions through 5 basic and sequential phases: planning, programming, budgeting, operations, and evaluation. Planning is an analytical activity carried out to aid in the selection of the organization's objectives and then to examine courses of action that could be taken in the pursuit of the objectives. Planning, in effect, poses the question of whether some particular course of action would contribute more to the attainment of the organization's goal than its various alternatives. Programming is a function that converts plans into specific action schedule for the organization. Programming consists of developing detailed resource requirements and the actions needed to implement plans. Budgeting is the activity concerned with the preparation and justification of the organization's annual budget. The function of budgeting is to secure sufficient funds to put the program into operation. Operations consist of the actual carrying out of organization's programs. Preparing for operations is the object for all the other phases. Evaluation is a function that evaluates the worth of operating programs. Through program evaluation, the worth of programs in attaining goals is measured and appraised. The result of evaluations is used to modify current operations if indicated or in planning future programs. Let us now look into different stages of Planning Program Budgetary System or Ppbs. The first stage, that is Specification of Objectives. Here what happens is the objectives of the program are to be specified in consistence with the long-term goals in quantitative terms as far as possible. The second phase or stage is all about systemic analysis. Here, the possible alternative projects to achieve the program objectives are analyzed in a systematic way with the use of cost-benefit and cost-effectiveness analysis. The third stage is about functional classification, where the budget is classified on a functional basis like functions, programs, projects, and activities. The fifth stage is about organization, where the budget formulation addresses the organizational structure, managerial and administrative procedures of the programs, projects, or activities. The last stage is about evaluation, where the mechanism of evaluation of performance is on the basis of financial and fiscal performances to monitor and take corrective action if necessary.
Zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is a method of budgeting whereby all expenses for the new period are calculated on the basis of actual expenses that are to be incurred and not on the differential basis, which involves just changing the expenses incurred taking into account change in operational activity. Under this method, every activity needs to be justified, explaining the revenue that every cost will generate for the company. In traditional budgeting, the previous year's budget is taken as a base for the preparation of the budget, whereas each time the budget under zero-based budgeting is created, the activities are re-evaluated and thus started from scratch.
Let us now look into the steps involved in preparing zero-based budgeting. The first step, identification of the task. Second one, finding ways and means to accomplish the task. Third step, evaluating the solutions and also evaluating alternative sources of funds. And finally, setting the budgeted numbers and priorities.
Variance analysis. Variance analysis is a process of identifying causes of variation in the income and expenses of the current year from the budgeted values. It helps to understand why fluctuations happen and what can or should be done to reduce the adverse variance. This eventually helps in better budgeting activity. Variance analysis deals with an analysis of deviations in the budgeted and actual financial performance of a company. The causes of the difference between the actual outcome and the budgeted numbers are analyzed to showcase the areas for improvement for the company.
Adjustments of funds. This refers to reallocation of funds from one project to the another depending on the immediate requirement. For instance, if a new project started by an organization needs money and there is surplus money allocated to an already existing project, then the surplus funds can be adjusted against new projects for its initial setup. This technique facilitates proper allocation and adjustment of funds and prevents misuse. Human resource accounting. Human resource accounting means accounting for people as the organizational resources. It is a measurement of the cost and value of the people to the organization. It involves measuring cost incurred by private firms and public sectors to recruit, select, hire, train, and develop employees and judge their economic value to the organization. Human resource accounting is an attempt to identify and report investment made in the human resources of the organization that are not presently accounted for under conventional accounting practices. Basically, it is an information system that tells the management what changes over time are occurring to the human resources of the business and of the cost and value of the human factor to the organization. The system may serve both an internal and external users, providing management with relevant data on which to base recruiting, training, and other development decisions, and supplying investors, leaders, and other external users of financial statements with information concerning the investment in and utilization of human resources in the organization. Thus, it is an information system which informs the management about the changes that are taking place in the human resources of the organization.
Non-budgetary control techniques. Non-budgetary control techniques are control measures taken by the organization other than financial resources. It means keeping a control on non-budgeted expenses.
Let us now try to understand what are the different types of non-budgetary control techniques. The first one being statistical data. Statistical analysis of innumerable aspects of a business operation and the clear presentation of statistical data, whether of a historical or forecast nature, are of course important to control. Some managers can readily interpret tabular statistical data, but most managers prefer presentation of the data on charts. Break-even point. Every firm's objective is to maximize profit. And at the beginning, it becomes very difficult for the firm to know beforehand what is the profit maximizing level of output. The break-even point indicates the minimum level of production which the firm has to undertake to become economically viable. Product life cycle. A product life cycle is the amount of time a product goes from being introduced into the market until it's taken off the shelves. There are 4 major stages in a product's life cycle, that is introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. The concept of product life cycle helps inform business decision making from pricing and promotion to expansion and cost cutting. Pert and Cpm. Pert being programmed evaluation and review technique, and Cpm, that is critical path method, are important network techniques useful in planning as well as controlling. Pert, that is project evaluation and review technique, is appropriate technique which is used for projects where the time required or needed to complete different activities are not known. Pert is majorly applied for scheduling, organization, and integration of different tasks within a project. It provides a blueprint of project and is efficient technique for project evaluation. Critical path method, or CPM, is a technique which is used for projects where the time needed for completion of a project is already known. It is used for determining the approximate time within which a project can be completed. Critical path is the largest path in project management, which always provide minimum time taken for completion of project. Auditing. Another effective tool of managerial control is internal audit, or as it is now coming to be called, the operational audit. Auditing in its broadest sense is a regular and independent appraisal by a staff of internal auditors of accounting, financial, and other operation of a business. Let us now try to understand what are the different kinds of modern control techniques. They are return on investment, ratio analysis, responsibility accounting, management information system, and management audit. Let us first try to understand what is return on investment. Return on investment is a tool to improve financial performance. It helps the business to compare its present performance with that of the previous year's performance. It helps to conduct inter-firm comparisons. It also shows the areas where corrective actions are needed. Return on investment can be defined as one of the important and useful techniques. It provides the basics and guides for measuring whether or not invested capital has been used effectively for generating a reasonable amount of return. Return on investment can be used to measure the overall performance of an organization or of its individual departments or divisions. Next is ratio analysis. Ratio analysis is a quantitative method of gaining insight into a company's liquidity, operational efficiency, and profitability by studying its financial statements such as balance sheet and income statement. The most commonly used ratios used by the organizations can be classified into the following categories: liquidity ratio, solvency ratio, profitability ratio, and turnover ratio. Liquidity ratios, they measure the ability of the firm to meet current obligations. A solvency ratio is a key metric used to measure an enterprise's ability to meet its long-term debt obligations and is used often by prospective business lenders. A solvency ratio indicates whether a company's cash flow is sufficient to meet its long-term liability and thus is a measure of its financial health. Profitability ratios measure overall performance and effectiveness of the firm. And finally, turnover ratio represents the amount of assets or liabilities that a company replaces in relation to its sales. Next is responsibility accounting. Responsibility accounting can be defined as a system of accounting in which overall involvement of different sections, divisions, and departments of an organization are set up as responsibility centers. The head of the center is responsible for achieving the target set for his center. The centers of control are cost center, revenue center, profit center, and investment center. Let us take the example of a revenue center. A revenue center is a center devoted to raising revenue with no responsibility for production. A good example is sales center. It is a responsibility center in which a manager is only held responsible for the level of revenue or output of a center as measured in monetary terms, but not responsible for the cost of goods or services that the center sells. Next is management information system. In order to control the organization properly, the management needs accurate information. They need information about the internal working of the organization and also about the external environment. Information is collected continuously to identify problems and find out solutions. Management information system collects data, processes it, and provides it to the managers. Management information system may be manual or computerized. With this, managers can delegate authority to the subordinates without losing control. Thus, a management information system is an information system that evaluates, analyzes, and processes an organization's data to produce meaningful and useful information based on which the management can take a right decision to ensure future growth of the organization. Next is management audit. Management audit refers to a systematic appraisal of the overall performance of the management of an organization. The purpose is to review the efficiency and effectiveness of management and to improve its performance in future periods. These are some of the controlling techniques that helps the organization in moving further without actually losing or falling short of the benchmark that they have actually set. Thank you.